Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Furbabies podcast with your host, Stephanie Goodman. Whether you've got a roof for a kid or a meow for your fur baby, Stephanie Goodman is here to discuss some of the different things that are going on in the world, going on with your fur pets and your pets. And so we say welcome to the Furbabies podcast.
Thank you very much for the intro on that. It's always nice to have someone to help you out with it. Today, I wanted to do an episode for the podcast for everybody about something that's been going on really across the country regarding our dogs. And so today's episode is going to touch on blue-green algae, actually. And there's been a lot of stuff going on with that lately. Here in Austin alone, about 3 to 4 weeks ago, we started having reports of dogs getting very sick and dying in Lady Bird Lake, which is here in Austin in Texas.
Didn't it make the actual national news?
It did make the national news. And it at first you think it's one of those things where it's definitely not just happening here. We did make the news about it, and it was really, really tragic what happened. And people are kind of shocked. On the basis of blue-green algae, most people expect it to be in a slow-moving body of water or a pond or something like that, but it's happening in lakes and rivers. And the interesting thing is people are saying they found it in bodies of water where it's clear and it's not just murky. So it's our old thought of, it's just going to be in, rancid, nasty water isn't accurate anymore.
So this shows up a lot during the summer because the heat and the stagnancy of it, and it grows kind of like crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. Gotta love photosynthesis.
Yeah.
So we made the news with Austin with Lady Bird Lake, and they closed it off. People can't swim in it anyway, but they closed it off for animals, and they told all the dog owners to keep their dogs out of the water. Not to drink the water, not to go in the water. So for summer, everybody takes their dogs kayaking and boating and things like that. Well, now they're not doing that. And now they've also found it in a couple of other spots here in Austin, down by Auditorium Shores and Barton Creek. And they're theorizing that it's coming from upstream. And for a couple of reasons. One is we've had a very warm summer, and so it's growing a lot faster, a lot more rampantly. But last year, Austin had a flood, and we ended up being under a boil of water notice for a week because the sediment sort of overwhelmed the system. So all that silt ended up, down at the bottom of the waterways, and apparently with all the heat that we've had and the lack of rain, it's just produced an environment where this algae just grows a lot faster. And they don't really, a lot of news reports have said they don't really know how to treat it aside from using a couple of chemicals they obviously don't want to put in the water. And so their thing has been to tell people, do not take your dogs into the lake. And I was really heartbroken reading that. I mean, literally some of the people here in Austin that have lost their dogs, it's just tragic. And it could be any one of us, I mean, when Princey was still here, we would take her swimming down in the springs, and she was a total water dog. She loved to get in the water. So it could be any one of us. And I just wanted to go on and talk about it to get the word out in case people haven't seen it.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because are these dogs like swimming in, or you were reading cases where the dogs were just kind of wading around in the water, and it's something that they end up ingesting? Or
Yeah.
it go in the skin and irritates them, or they have to swallow it or drink? What happens with that stuff?
So a lot of the cases that I've read, and it's been in different states, not just here, some of those owners have said that their dogs didn't even go into the water. They were right along the edge, right along the shore. And so for some of them, they were just kind of playing in the mud and, a little bit of the water that's there, but they weren't swimming in the lake and they weren't boating. But what's happening is apparently if they swallow the water that has the algae in it, or if they get in the water and the algae gets on their skin, they get out of the water and they lick it off and they ingest the toxins. And what's happening in it, it's not even the algae, it's a bacteria that's growing and attaching with the algae. So on the different reports and even through the pet poison hotline, they've got a great article about what it is, what the different types of bacteria are, and what it does and which parts of the body it affects. So for some of the dogs, they haven't necessarily died immediately. The bacteria that attaches to the algae is cyanobacteria, but there's a part of it that it can affect their skin, or it can go after their liver, or it can go after, it's a neurotoxin. So it literally, it said that it's shutting down the connection from their brain to their diaphragm. They have seizures, they get paralyzed, they can't breathe, and they're dying.
In a matter of how long, though?
Oh my God. Some of these have said their dog got out of the water and 15 minutes later, they started having seizures. They started vomiting, or they had diarrhea, and then they couldn't breathe.
Well, but isn't that true? That does happen. But I think according to the news story, it said that a lot of times when the animals get out of it, their back legs go out. They can't stand.
Yeah.
That's the first time. Right?
Yes. And in fact, one of the poor girls here in Austin, she got her dog out of Ladybird, and she said like 30 minutes later, her dog just collapsed. Went from swimming in the lake, totally fine, got out, he was very unsteady. He couldn't walk straight, collapsed. And by the time, because you're in total shock, because nobody expects that to happen when you come out of the water. And usually with a large dog, it's kind of challenging to pick them up and carry them. But she was able to get her dog to the vet, but the vet, the only thing that the vets have said they can try to do is to give them oxygen or give them anti-seizure meds. But the problem is when it's a neurotoxin, and with this specifically, it was the anatoxins, they said, it just shuts everything down so fast they can't stop it. They can't get in front of it. So it's
a nasty bug.
It is really, really, really bad.
Now, one of the things you also mentioned, you're reading about this article, is it affects dogs of all sizes, small or big.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any cases about, I take that back. Cats are probably going to go wading in the pond, though, for the most part.
No, if you take a cat into a pond, you do that at your own risk, usually. I can give mine a bath, but they still are sort of like, no, we're good. We're fine. But yeah, it's affected all manner of breeds and size dogs. I've read reports of Westies and a German Shepherd, Labs, obviously, golden retrievers, little, oh goodness, I'm trying to think of the breed, but little dogs. So
Chihuahuas?
It's been both. I have not found one about a Chihuahua yet, but I would not be surprised.
All
God
sizes.
bless them. All sizes.
Basically,
so
they're drinking the water, or they're cleaning themselves,
yeah,
ingesting the algae, and then it basically attacks their nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically suffocates them to death, basically shuts down or paralyzes.
It paralyzes their diaphragm and they can't breathe. Or they start having seizures, and the seizures, it's a litany of symptoms. And the interesting thing about it is a lot of the symptoms that the sites have listed, things like vomiting, diarrhea, foaming at the mouth, drooling excessively, seizures, dark urine or blood in the urine, loss of appetite, stumbling, muscle twitches, and respiratory distress. Those were the biggest things that they listed. Well, a lot of those things can also trigger or look like it's another problem. So for these people coming out of the lakes, it's just, they're in shock. They're like, what is happening? And then there's the distress of, some of them are out in the middle of, I wouldn't say nowhere, but they're out far enough away from, a vet that it takes too long to get there.
So you've got to carry your dog in a remote area and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, wow. Was there a website that you said listed places, not only in Texas, but other places?
Well, that was interesting. I haven't found one yet. So two things. In some of these individual states that have been reporting it, and it's, I made a list because I was afraid I would forget all the states. But they found blue algae in New York, Vermont, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Virginia, Georgia, Texas, Florida, California, Oregon, and North Carolina, if I didn't say North Carolina already. And so North Carolina actually has an interactive map that they created where they've shown red dots for the cyanobacteria, which is the toxin, and also just areas where they found the blue algae where it's not testing positive. And they said that for they've got certain measurements to test it by, but they can only clear a lake or a pond if it goes for 2 weeks without being over that limit. So it's kind of a long period of time. And even here in Austin, they closed the lake, 3 weeks ago, and it's still not open. And in fact, now they're finding out that it's spreading. So with the summer that we've had really across the country, it's spreading. So some of these states have individual pages, or they have news reports that have cropped up. I mean, if you just Google blue-green algae in dogs, it's coming up everywhere. So my advice, and what I would do is just to go research my city and see if they've put anything up, because it's at least it's becoming something that people are paying attention to, and it's starting to get out of the news. And a lot of people on Facebook, bless their hearts, are sharing it and talking about what happened, and they're sharing pictures of their dogs, which is, I was reading through all that, and just I hate seeing that happened to them, because it's young dogs too. It's not even just older dogs. So it really doesn't spare anybody.
So the best advice is, instead of taking your dogs out to the lake or the pond, check online first to make sure it's clear.
Yeah.
And if that's not clear, then go to the local grocery store and pay $10 for the kiddie pool.
I would, if it were me this summer, I would, honest to God, I would go back to Target or Walmart or something, and I would buy one of those little kiddie pools like we used to have, and just fill it up in the backyard and let them go splash around in it or play in the hose pipe or something. And that was the crazy thing, because you would expect, if I'm out hiking with my dog and I come upon a body of water that looks kind of brackish, or, if it's something that I wouldn't get into, I'm not going to let my dog get into it. But some of these people are legitimately reporting and taking pictures of lakes and ponds that are crystal clear. You can see more than a foot down. You can see 2 or 3 feet down. And it doesn't look like something that you would need to be afraid of. And I think that was the most sobering thing, was it kind of leaves, even me wondering, well, is it safe to go in any water at this point? So when I started looking for the sites online and for different states and cities that have been reporting this, it's helpful. So I really wanted to put together a list on the Facebook page for places that have reported this happening, and they've gotten, they're doing testing, or they're doing, something to show if it's spread, if it's gone down, if it's shown up in another area in the state. And it probably is a little bit intensive to do that, but I think it would be very much worthwhile.
Cool. Good stuff, Steph.
So
good stuff. So what's the website on the poison website you mentioned earlier?
I can post it. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it was the petpoisonhelpline.com. And they had a comprehensive list of symptoms and what to look for. Most of the reports that I've read, though, it sounds like it's the antitoxins that are hitting, and they're the fastest. And it's been taking dogs out within 15 minutes to a couple of hours. I mean, it's really, really been fast. The other one that affects their liver, you may have a little bit more of a lead time with it, but those are the ones that it was like, if you notice they were jaundiced, which is their skin turns yellow, or if they have a loss of appetite, or blood in their urine, or dark urine, that was one of the signs for if it was affecting their liver. But for the antitoxins, they started to stumble, they started to have seizures, they collapsed, they couldn't breathe, and that was that. So that was the biggest thing. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, another interesting thing about this whole thing is some of the owners actually here in Austin mentioned that it made them think about getting pet insurance, because one of them, God love her, she took her dog to the vet, and the vet was like, I can't stop this, you need to go to the ER. Well, she went to the ER, and they couldn't stop it either. But if you've ever taken your dog or your cat to a veterinary ER, it's not inexpensive. And if you're not prepared for that, and you're not expecting something terrible to happen, which most of us aren't, it can pack a heck of a wallop on your pocketbook, and it can be really pricey. So she had made the comment that, not to be morbid, but to look at, different pet insurance companies and seeing if there's something that you could take out for your pet. And most of the time, especially now, you can insure them for anywhere from $30 to $60 a month, depending on what it is. So there's a lot of different companies out there, and it's definitely worth looking into. So
tell them how to follow up with you.
I welcome any stories, comments, also love for the people that are going through this that have lost their littles. On the Facebook page, it's the Furbabies podcast. So you can post there or share stories or whatnot. And I really would like to start putting together a map of resources of places where this has been happening, so people could, maybe have another spot to go to look up their state or city or whatnot. So I guess, okay. That's it for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope that this helps somebody to not have that happen to their dog. So. Stop cloud recording. Okay.